welcome to the second Worcester Sucks Power Hour. Brendan, how are you doing?
Bill, how are you? I'm doing
Oh,
great. I can't
I'm.
see your chin though.
Oh yeah, look at that.
There you are.
You gotta stop slouching. Um, it's a great day out here. Very lovely. Great day to be pretty much anybody besides an airport reservist in Devens, Massachusetts. Um, who
Down
just
at the Cape,
ruined
actually,
the
not down at
war.
Devens, but yeah, over
Oh,
down at the
okay.
Cape.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. So, Worcester Sucks Power Hour. This is episode 1 because the first one was episode 0. I don't know why I chose to do it that way, but for those who are just joining in for this show and didn't catch the last one, what we're doing here is we're just going to keep it loosey goosey, and we're going to talk about a couple things from the newsletter and other stuff happening in Worcester. And the idea is to just sort of have a second stream for the Worcester Council Theater 3000 folks and supplement the newsletter. So there's a couple things that I really want to talk about today. I think that top of the list is doing a little recap on the inclusionary zoning vote from Tuesday, which Worcester Council Theater streamers were there with us to suffer through. But I wrote about it a little bit in Worcester Sucks newsletter today, and the vote was predictable. It was 4-7 for the inclusionary zoning policy, which would have been useful in any way. And then a unanimous vote after that lost for a version from the city, which probably won't accomplish anything at all.
Right.
We can. This stuff is kind of wonky how it works. It's kind of confusing, but basically it's a little bit reductive. But the short answer is that the coalition's inclusionary zoning would have mandated the creation of some housing that was loosely what we might call affordable. The city's version sort of just encourages developers to include some units that may or may not be that affordable. It's all based on this area median income designation, and if you really looked at the numbers, you'd find that what we're calling affordable here is really just like what apartments were in Worcester like 3 years ago.
Right.
It's really not. It's not. This isn't like public housing.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't some massive giveaway. It's just 60% of the area median income is a salary of $46,000 a year, which is, there's a lot of people in Worcester that make quite a bit less than that.
Not on the Worcester Police Department.
Not on the Worcester Police Department. Yeah, and that's sort of what I wrote about today, sort of tying those two things together. Because also on the city council agenda, there was, the annual spreadsheet of what everyone in the city makes.
Mm-hmm.
And the cops are the top 47 out of 50 earners. Yeah, look at that. It is all police. It's just all the way down the line. It's police, and we'll get into some of the specific police numbers a little later. But just to tie it into the inclusionary zoning thing, I scrolled down the list to get to that $46,000 that mark for city employees, and that got down to about the 4,000th highest paid city employee, but there's 7,000, so there's 3,000 city employees that make less than $46,000 a year. So that's 3,000 city employees who could stand to benefit from real inclusionary zoning policy, but the city still just refuses to move on it. And I saw earlier today that Eric Batista is out on the Talk of the Commonwealth being like, you know what, folks, we did it. We got it done. We got inclusionary zoning. And, going forward.
Terrifies me to think that he actually believes that, which I don't think he does. But if he does, it's terrifying. And I feel like this is the place, too, that folks need a lot of context as well, that So, like, if you have stable housing, whether you've got a lease that's like a fixed rate of increase or you have a mortgage, like, you probably have no idea what costs are in the city right now. And just for the sake of throwing out numbers, like for 2022, the Worcester Housing Authority was paying just over $1,800 a month for a 3-bedroom housing for subsidized housing. So it's like
Right.
if you were got on a list 10 years ago for subsidized housing, like a 3-decker of a rundown, a floor of a rundown 3-decker somewhere, they're willing to pay $1,800 a month for that. Like, if you bought your house 10 years ago, you're probably in the 5-bedroom range is where your mortgage would need to be
Yeah.
paying $1,800 a month. Like, I know that's way more than my mortgage is month to month, and I bought almost 20 years ago. It's like things have changed so fast and way faster than our economics on the pay side, not just for city employees, but for people in the private sector as well too. And it's
Yeah.
all being predicated on, like you said, Bill, these area income levels that follow census tracts. So, like what we are considering our area or median income, that includes Bridgewater, Connecticut, right? It includes like the
Right.
southernmost part of New Hampshire. It's this huge tract of land that has nothing to do with the city of Worcester and the people who actually have needs locally.
Right. Right. And it was a bridge too far, even considering that the area median income is based not just on like incomes in the city, but like all of the suburbs around it, like the entire 290, 390 belt basically
Right.
is what we're dealing with. So like communities like Millbury, factor into our area median income. And the housing advocates were hammering away at this for months about how like 50% of Worcester families make, less than $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
And for a single income household, the area median income, 60% is $46,000. So like this is not like, we're not even talking about like our most vulnerable poorest people here. We're just literally talking about like regular people
Yeah.
who increasingly can't find anywhere to. My apartment is 3-bedroom. I have 2 roommates, $1,800 a month, and it's a fucking shithole.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do better than that right now without stuffing myself into like a 10-person collective house.
Right.
And that's the case for everybody. For everybody in Worcester right now. But I think that going forward, going into election season here, this is definitely like a defining vote. This 4-7 vote, as I wrote about today, this 4-7 vote is really the difference between whether or not the city councilors give a shit about you at all. There were 4 councilors that voted to give a shit about you, and there were 7 that did not.
Right.
And 1 on each side of that is not running. So there's really 3 councilors that give a shit about renters or people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Ital too, and Christian, as it is on every issue. And then you got Joe Petty, Kenny Merrill Carlson, Donna Colorio, Kate Toomey, Mo Bergman, who decided to not give a shit at all. Like
Yeah.
in front of a council chamber stuffed with 200 people that were just begging them to take this small action. And and one of the people that spoke was a 15-year-old homeless girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like in school, in high school, homeless, talking very plaintively about how hard it is to find housing. And nevertheless, they just went ahead and said, oh, we can't do that, that's a bridge too far, that might hurt a developer theoretically in the future.
And for the sake of comparison, when we were doing drones a year ago, when a dozen people who are all either married to police officers or just angry dudes from New Hampshire come in. It was like that other side, the seven in this case, were all like, the people have spoken, and it's here you've got
right.
200 people, some of whom would love to live in Worcester, but unfortunately they have to live in a hotel in Westboro and find transportation to North High every day
Yeah.
because they're effectively homeless. And yeah, that doesn't count for anything. Sorry, we're not hearing you.
Yeah, that's none of their concern. And also, that was a 15-year-old person, not a girl or a woman.
My apologies.
No, that was me. I did that. And I'm sorry. But yeah. So I think that the trouble with, even though this presents like probably the clearest picture yet of who the good counselors are and who the bad counselors are, the trouble is going to be in the messaging here, because the city did pass inclusionary zoning, and somebody like Joe Petty is going to campaign on housing affordability being an issue and saying not inaccurately that they passed an inclusionary zoning policy.
Right.
Obviously what they're not saying, the devil's in the details, and they they passed something that might maybe in the future create a couple apartments that are a little bit cheaper than the market, but that's not what the spirit of inclusionary zoning is. And how do you make that distinction? So I think that's really on Attell too and Christian to come up with a way to make that distinction and keep that coalition of people motivated, because there were hundreds of people down there, and like almost every speaker spoke with like just a palpable rage at the housing situation in Worcester, and rightly so. I did think it was interesting that 4 of the counselors chose just not to speak on it at all, despite the culture of the council being like, when there's a big issue, everyone has to speak for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, like Plantation Street, changing the name of Plantation Street. Oh, we're all talking on that.
Right.
This one, our more conservative counselors decided to keep their mouths shut. And that was Kate Toomey, Donna Colorio, Kenny Merrill Carlson, and Mo Bergman did not speak on this before voting against the coalition's proposal. And all of them had candidates that will be running against them that spoke.
Right.
Rob Bellotta. Am I pronouncing that right? Bellotta or Bellotta?
I think it's Bellotta.
Bellotta, yeah.
Yeah. Rob
Bellotta running against Candy in D2. He spoke for the coalition proposal. And then there was Mady Morales and Dominic Baroni and Guillermo Creamer. Although I don't know if Guillermo's taken out papers yet, but he's pretty much said that he's going to run. So,
right. Taking his sweet ass time.
Yeah. Well, he's got till May 30th, so no
focused
rush.
more and appropriately so on a sweet ass city council fit when he comes to speak.
Yeah,
he's got his priorities in order.
Yeah, that purple and blue blazer thing going on. That was great. So, I mean, like, I think that all of these more conservative counselors were like really staring down their direct competition coming up in November. And honestly, I'm excited and even a little bit optimistic that we're gonna get some of them out of there.
Right.
I think Candy is extremely vulnerable. And
Rob brings a lot to the table on that front. If anyone wasn't watching, Rob is very open and loves talking about this. He's got, I believe it's CP, and he's in a wheelchair. And he was there specifically speaking to one of the ADA amendments that was coming up. But when I've spoken to him, he seems pretty frank about the idea that he wants to make sure that disabilities are a part of the conversation when we're having conversations about inclusion and diversity and whatnot, which it's like, thank fucking God. We spend a lot of time we did last week, talking about things like crosswalks and whatnot. There are so many things that we're turning a blind eye to when it comes to any member of a community that would fit under the ADA umbrella. And that seems to be where he wants to be tip of the spear, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge credit to the city council, to have someone like that that's really versed in those issues, sort of leading the charge, because that's what we see with Attell. Attell knows housing inside and out,
Hmm.
and really sort of led the push for the coalition's more aggressive inclusionary zoning policy. Um, and having people like that really know what they're talking about is such a breath of fresh air on the city council. Because like historically the
Yeah.
city council has just been it's just weirdos and losers.
Totally. And I will be the first to admit, when I was younger, like I would totally buy into the idea of like somebody coming to run for office and being like, I have the lived experience of a business person. I know what I'm doing. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, fuck that noise. Like, I want your lived experience as a immigrant, a lived experience of living in poverty, being in a wheelchair, right? I mean, like we finally
right.
have people who are stepping up who have meaningful lived experience that doesn't involve a shitty discount suit.
Yeah, right. I have lived experience as an attorney. you know, it's either been attorneys or realtors, really, or like people with fake jobs, like Joe.
The people who have a lot of free time, man. I'm one of them. I get it. That's exactly
Yeah,
what it is. It's
yeah, right. Yeah, why do you think we're here at 4 o'clock on Thursday? Just happy to yuck it up, But no, it's that's I think the issue. Yeah, Matt Wally's lived experience is just recusing himself from anything about Polar Park. I don't think Matt Wally is going to run again. I hope he doesn't. Um, but you know what? That is interesting. Haven't really touched on this a whole lot yet. Um, Attell's still the only person I believe that's taken up papers in D5.
yes.
I think that people are terrified to run against her, and rightly so.
Yeah, I was hearing out of the gate that both Steve Quist and actually Wayne Griffin was thinking about it again too. Which, thank goodness, they might both be sparing us that nonsense. But
Yeah,
I think you're spot on. I think a lot of people going into her first term viewed her as being weak and frail, and we'll be able to beat her up in 2 years after she trips over herself. And Attell has done a masterful job of not allowing any of that to happen. And I mean, she has just shown over the last year as as both a newcomer and somebody who actually has principles.
right, right. Yeah, who just like just the act of just giving a shit
Hmm.
in public on the city council floor. Pretty remarkable. Unfortunately, that is extremely remarkable for a city councilor to do.
Yeah.
Um, and the last election, if I'm remembering correctly, it wasn't close. Like she trounced everyone.
Yes.
Like and they're probably just thinking that it's not worth the embarrassment of trying again. And honestly, good. Oh, is this our most updated list? Let me take a quick look at that.
Yeah, still
Yeah,
nobody else in 5, and still nobody running for school committee in District D, which was supposed to be the important one. I cannot wrap my head around that.
yeah, I know. That is going to be. We should talk about school committee for a second because there's a couple things that really could mess up the good thing that we had going with the school committee heading into this changing of the lines, so to speak. But yeah, if no one runs in District D, which is one of the two majority minority districts outlined by this consent decree, I straight up don't know what happens.
Yeah.
Is there just another at large? Like, I think that I don't even know if that's a settled question. Like, if there's any sort of language in the charter or anything that like answers that question.
I haven't seen what the updates to that are going to look like in terms of whether it's an appointment or whatever the case may be. But yeah, that could be really concerning.
Yeah, right, right. And then, um, Diana Biancaria could get back on running in District C,
Hmm.
and that would be a totally regressive rightward slide. Um, Joda City Council District D is like um, Green Island, Main South, South Worcester, a little bit in the Grafton Hill
Yeah, it's not
area.
really any one neighborhood, but I think if you wouldn't have put a pin in the center of it, it's what we started calling Main Middle a couple of years back. It's not
Yeah,
quite Main South, not quite downtown. Yeah.
yeah, no one there yet. Oh, and then the big one is that what's her face, Maureen Benenda, taking out papers to run at large, and that would just be the worst. That's the worst possible situation in the world is if Maureen Benenda gets a school committee seat. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already working on my master list of Maureen Benenda goofs and gaffes and spoofs and boofs, and a couple other people are as well. But we got to really come correct to make sure that doesn't happen. Um, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Marine Bienenda looking at an at-large school committee seat is a lot like Wile E. Coyote looking at a highway painted on the side of a wall.
Right.
I think she's just going to um, eat massive shit.
Yeah.
But it's possible that she doesn't, and then we've reinstated our little petty Lord Farquaad of the Worcester Public Schools into a position of power. Um, at large running right now is, off the top of my head, it's Tracy Novick and Sue Mailman, and now Marine Benenda, and who else? Oh yeah, Laura Clancy.
Right.
Yeah, Tracy. Obviously, we don't deserve. We really don't deserve to have a resource like Tracy on our school committee, and she would have been right and smart to not run again, after the way she was treated about 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
By
I say this to people all the time, and I'm not sure that it really hits the way I intended to, but when I worked for the state, I worked for an agency that was involved with education. And at the time, it was thought that there were 3 people in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts who actually understood Chapter 70 funding.
Yeah.
One of them died while I was working for the state. Tracy is now one of those people that actually understands Chapter 70
Yeah.
funding. So whether you disagree with school funding or not, like, Tracy is one of the only people in the state that can actually tell you how that funding model functions. Like,
Right.
not having her around is terrible for everybody.
Right, right. And obviously, the worst case scenario here would be if we replace Tracy with Miriam Benenda. That is just awful to think about. So I think that school committee needs a lot of attention this year. Tracy, if there's anybody involved in Worcester politics that deserves a vote, it's got to be Tracy. Really, I mean, what did I say? I said on the stream on Tuesday that the only problem with Tracy is that she makes stupid people feel stupid and they resent her for it.
It's true. I've been on the receiving end of that before. It feels terrible, but you know what? She's always right. That's just what it
She's
comes
always
down
right.
to.
Yeah. She literally is she's just head and shoulders like smarter than everybody else.
And that doesn't mean you have to appreciate her take on sneakers, but when it comes to public education funding, it's Tracy. That's it. There's nothing else.
Yeah, right. It's true. It's true. Trouble 50. I don't think Benenda has ever run for school committee, or any elected office, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, no. She was superintendent for a while, and did a horrible job, and was credibly accused of being racist in her language, intent, and policies, and really don't want Marine Benenda back in the saddle. So we're gonna have to watch that one closely. Who is the other weirdo? The other weirdo from last time that we haven't seen yet is Chanel Susie of the sign behind Brendan's fame, the Pornhub candidate. The Pornhub candidate is not running, as far as we know, but might be. Maybe didn't like probably last time being called out for being the Pornhub candidate, so that might have disincentivized her from trying it again. Biancaria was the one that got bumped off last time.
Correct, yeah.
Not Binyenda. And Biancaria is basically just like Binyenda, but dumber. Is probably the best way to put. I can't overstate how just fundamentally there's just rocks kicking up in there in the Biancaria brain. There is nothing going on up there. A holdover from the Ray Mariano times.
Right.
Her and Rob Pizzella, who is out. Yeah.
And just to extrapolate something from your piece today, Bill, I mean, because I hope we talk about it at least a little bit, with the threat of teachers looking for a positive contract negotiation, going to a strike. If this isn't resolved in a short timeline, this could very well be something that carries into the next cycle. And that's when the amount of damage that could be done by a worst case scenario reshuffling of the school committee, it just could be a total nightmare scenario for the public school students in Worcester.
That's true. Yeah. Gaming that out. Okay. So like there was a rally or there were standouts all over the city today from the Education Association of Worcester, and there's going to be a rally on the 27th in front of City Hall, and I've heard from a few people that the possibility of there being an outright strike, it's not insignificant. I don't think anyone's really there yet. It's not like it's
Right.
gonna happen, but it's something that could happen. And if that happens, I mean, there's going to be a vote of no confidence in the school committee, and every incumbent is going to suffer from that heading into this new system where like everything is getting shuffled around.
Right.
That could be really, really bad. Yeah, you would. I mean, there's not very many people who aren't incumbents that are running for the new school committee seats, but pretty much all of them are bad that aren't incumbents. So, God, yeah, that's really that is not fun to think about, because a strike.
Well, it didn't mean to bring you down, but I just feel like that's something that the timelines don't match up ideally, but it is something that could get really bad as we head into what tends to be our actual election season, which is right as school comes back in.
Right. Yeah, September, October. And if there's a strike going on in September, October, oh man, yeah, that'll be really bad. So the sticking point with the contract negotiations with the school committee and the Education Association of Worcester is just pretty much wages, with a heavy emphasis on what we're paying para educators and like support staff. And they've been without a contract since 2020, I believe. Although I got to give myself a little bit of a refresher on this. I believe they've been without a contract for 3 years, and they're complaining that their pay is so low compared to surrounding districts that they're just hemorrhaging good people.
Right.
Good people are leaving left and right from all sorts of jobs, and they can't compete with other districts in the area to pay teachers what they deserve. And for some reason, although we have all the money in the world to pay one Worcester cop $300,000 to watch people do construction work, we can't find the money to increase teacher or paraeducator pay. And that is, not the fault of any individual school committee member, but it does really speak to, when it comes to budgeting and priorities, Worcester has made it pretty clear what their priorities are. And the Education Association of Worcester would be right to strike if that's what it comes to. I mean, they deserve to make more money. But at the same time, the top 50 people on the payroll in Worcester, 47 of them are cops. Police Captain, let's see here, what's his name? Nick DeAndrea. He made $286,000 last year. And $46,000 of that money is just in a category called other pay. Like they don't even say what the other pay is. Like there's overtime is a listed category, detail work is a listed category, but then there's another category all the way over to the right on that list that's just other pay. And for cops, the other pay is absolutely outrageous. Second on the list, Jeremiah O'Rourke, $36,000 in other pay. Fourth on the list, Police Lieutenant Dan Fallon, $35,000 in other pay, and it goes down and down the list. There's a lot of cops on here that are making, basically teacher salaries in this like spurious category that I have no idea what it is, of this other pay. I really need to figure out what they mean when they say that.
And
Because
the
I'm looking
category
at-
of other is shockingly close to what gets gets you almost eligible for housing under the inclusionary zoning program. It was
Yeah,
just like
right,
the
right,
stuff we
right.
don't even have a name for is still
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
It's kind of, it's actually, now that I'm looking at it, it is extremely dark and ironic that Matthew D'Andrea made 46,499 in other pay. And the area median income, 60% of the area median income for a single person is 46,500. So this guy in this category where you don't even know what the money's for or where it's coming from, that is, they're making as much as somebody who would qualify for inclusionary zoning housing units in the policy that we voted down. Yeah. So that's just insane. And I mean, honestly, what could it be? Because I'm looking at the spreadsheet now, and if you're looking over across the top, there's gross pay, regular pay, pay detail, overtime, and then there's a bunch of other categories where that could be other stuff, but it's not even that. There's stipends, there's coach pay, there's longevity pay, there's hazmat, out of grade. There's a lot of categories here, and then there's just this amorphous other.
The two things that I can think of where, because it says retro above it too, if there was a contract cycle that was catch up, it's very possible that an arbitration group said, hey, we came to an agreement. This is money that you didn't get paid over the last 10 years, but you're due it, and the city does bank it in the past. It didn't just get spent, so they play catch up. The other thing that comes to mind is a lot of times you have folks that don't work as much overtime, but they might work in a specialized unit where they can apply for grants for extra money. And so I mean, it's still taxpayer dollars, but it's coming through HUD instead of coming out of the city coffers, where they're banking overtime, but because they actually have more work to do that the city can't fund. And that you find oftentimes with investigations where. Yeah. And I guess maybe there's an upside. There may be an upside to that, but it's also something that if you're going to put out the list, just say what it is. Like this is like when you run a business and like you got some nickels that you can't account for when you're reconciling your books. So you just put it in a category. Ask my accountant and hope the IRS doesn't come and do an audit, right? Like
yeah, right.
Give it a name. It shouldn't be that hard.
Did you guys see that Ed Augustus has $100,000 in this other pay?
Yeah, that's going to be the housing transaction with Eric, right?
Yeah.
That's the condo.
Yeah, that's the condo that Eric sold him. Yeah,
out of the slush fund.
Yeah, just pull it out of ARPA. We're not gonna spend it on anything good, so might as well. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. This list is, I mean, just if you open up the list and quickly scroll through it, and you just scroll down, you go. It's like a slideshow. It goes cop, and then you get to the middle of the list, and then it's teacher. It's like, yeah, we pay the police a lot more than teachers. And they do a lot.
I think
less.
we saw something on Tuesday it was really quick, but when Councillor Toomey was speaking about crime stats and how we need to celebrate the police for lower crime stats, she made a mention of how difficult a job they're having or difficult time they're having doing recruitment right now. And she brought up how other communities in Massachusetts are paying sign-on bonuses to encourage other new people to apply for the job. I would be shocked if by the end of this election cycle, we don't see her put that on the table as well, too, that you're looking at $10,000, $15,000 sign-on bonus to apply for that job.
Yeah, I'm sure the police union heads that control Kate Toomey, like the rat and Ratatouille, heard that and went, "Oh, that's a great idea. We should do."
Well, look, Bill, money fixes everything except for housing and quality education.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're paying these cops so much. Crime went down, despite there being less police officers than what do they call it? A complement. The complement of police officers, but it's such a strange word, I think. The complement of police officers. We have less police officers than we supposedly need, but the crime went down over the past year, despite this deficit of police officers. I think if we really want crime to go down, and that's the goal, let's try less police officers.
Yeah.
How about maybe our complement's at 75%? Let's try 60%.
Yeah.
See how that goes, and then 50. and then 40, and then 10 years, no police officers. See
No
how it
police
goes.
officers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should see how it goes. But it's a good time to bring up, now that we've been talking about the absolutely obscene amount of money that cops make. I had a guest piece today in the newsletter from Andrew Quimier, who's a great public records journalist in Massachusetts, does a lot of really good work in his newsletter called Mass Dump. He is one of the most tenacious public records requesters and acquirers in the state, and he does a lot of good work on Worcester. So I ran a piece of his that found that the city had to pay, on top of what they've already paid in this case they lost of obscuring police disciplinary records, an additional $180,000 to pay for the lawyers on the other side, on the Telegram side.
Huh.
Because that's part of the deal with the state's record laws, that you have to pay, if you lose the judgment, you have to pay for the other side's legal fees, and that took a lot to get that out of the city, and it was like a sort of a point of contention after the point of contention about the records, but they finally forked it over, and it's like, all right, we're seeing police officers with these absolutely disgusting salaries making more than U.S. senators. And we see that neatly in a spreadsheet, but it takes like a public records journalist digging in really hard to get the records to find out that we're also the other hidden costs of the way the police department operates, like this $180,000,
Right.
which, back of the napkin calculation, that's like 3 or 4 teachers. We paid 3 or 4 teachers that we could have had. We paid, or raises for like
Yeah.
20 teachers. We just had to pay to the Telegram and Gazette because we decided to take them to court for 3 years to try to not give over police records that are legally public.
Right.
And it's just there's so much hidden back end cost of the police department in this legal realm. I mean, how many multi-million-dollar judgments have we seen?
Yeah,
this
no,
year?
I mean, it's wild, dude. And I think the only way to think about it at this point is in the way that you eventually, as an employee, learn that, like, human resources isn't there to help you as an employee. That's what unions are for. It's there
Right.
to protect the company from you, the employee.
Right.
And, like, our law department is filling the same role now, right? Like, our law department does not function to benefit the residents of the city of Worcester. It doesn't even function to benefit the employees of the city of Worcester. It functions to benefit the city and its institutions, devoid of any individuals or personalities. And it's getting kind of gross. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just a thing that has grown over time, but it's also something somebody needs to figure out quickly before we're broke because we just
Yeah,
sue
right.
ourselves into oblivion. And it's
There was a really interesting quote in Andrew's piece. Scrolling down to find it. Here, I'll just read it. So during the oral arguments related to the legal fees issue, appeals court justice John Englander also slammed the city's conduct. Quote, I have to say, having a little experience in that position, I can understand the judge's concern over the good faith of the city's argument. What happened here is a newspaper wanted to write about something, and it took them 3 years to get the documents. That's success from the perspective of Worcester. And he's absolutely right. Of course,
Yeah.
that's success. That's money well spent. If you're going to
Yeah.
consider the law department to be like the HR for the police department and protect their interests, absolutely, it's money well spent to have obscured these disciplinary records for 3 years.
yeah. And it's not even, that's why I made the distinction too. It's not even helping the employees of the police department, because if we're going to put on our good guy hat and give the benefit of the doubt that there are some decent human beings over there,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are being harmed the most by shit behavior that's then covered for by the city just to keep. And it ends up being a soap opera, right, man? You got the paper of record, no offense to Mass Live, but you got the paper of record in this constant, like, Ouroboros argument with the city of Worcester, which ends up, like, that's where their stories now come from. The majority
Yeah.
of their City Hall coverage is their own lawsuits with City Hall.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know that either institution could exist without the other at this point.
Right. Yeah. And it's also I was surprised to learn, and I guess I didn't know this, but this is the third time that the Telegram has done this like exact same lawsuit against the city, and the city responds the same way every single time, and they keep losing. Oh man, it's just crazy. It's just crazy, but you know, city manager Eric Batista, he's out there saying, we got it done, folks. We got inclusionary zoning.
Got it done.
No problems, no troubles at all. A couple people put this on my radar, but there was just a super interesting. I'll throw the link in the chat. But there was a super interesting study on the effects of routine homeless encampment sweeps that the city of Worcester does, and a lot of cities do, as like directly contributing to like spikes in the mortality rate of unhoused people. It's kind of a wild thing, but it's a confirmation of what anyone who gives a shit has been saying, that the way the city does this stuff is extremely cruel.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just pull a little bit from this report up. Waiting for it to load.
Cruel and for no obvious benefit to the city, right? Like
No.
on the one hand, I can attempt to understand the mentality of somebody who is made so uncomfortable by the unhoused population of the city. I can make that attempt, but we know it's not accomplishing anything at all. Like, you're not fixing any problem. It's
you take down one camp only to cause the creation of another camp somewhere else, because what you're offering that's different from living outside in a camp in a tent. You don't have anything. You don't have an alternative that's better than that.
Yeah,
so
it's just putting duct tape on the rusty quarter panel of an '83 Buick, right? Like, you still have that problem under there. Like, you fix nothing. You got your inspection, but you fix nothing.
Right. And it's mostly done to the benefit of individual property owners who complain, and they feel like duty bound to go in there and address the complaints of individual property owners, without considering that not only are they not getting people into housing, they're making life like objectively worse for the people that they're doing this to.
Right.
And it kind of seems like that's the point. They just want to make life as uncomfortable as possible for unhoused people, which I really kind of believe in my heart that that's the case. But this study kind of confirms what is like obvious, that when you do these like routine sweeps, you set people back from like the square zero that they're on to an automatically worse and more dangerous square zero, especially because it usually involves throwing people's shit out.
Yeah.
And this study, which was in a medical journal, I can't speak to how they did this research, but their findings are crazy. And in the results section of this abstract here, they write, continual involuntary displacement may contribute to between 15.6 and 24.4 of additional deaths among unsheltered people experiencing homelessness who inject drugs over a 10-year period. And they said that over 10 years, it could lead to some like 200,000, I believe, is the number they used across the country.
Jesus.
And it's, it really just, it underscores the point that, we're just putting these people into unnecessarily more dangerous situations than their already dangerous situation when we do these sweeps, it for no benefit at all, besides giving the cops something to do that day. Travis, if you scroll down to page 6 of that, there's some interesting graphs.
And this is the same elected body that, going back just a couple years, when we were experiencing what we labeled an opioid crisis, It was all hands on deck, but apparently only when it involved, upper middle class white women from the suburbs. When you
Right,
actually
right.
have data in front of you showing that, like, no, you're making this a million times worse for this population, and it's the population that you're going out of your way to get rid of somehow. Yeah, no concerns given whatsoever.
Yeah. Right, and it's the same thing, but it's just there's all sorts of classism and stuff
Oh,
baked into
totally.
this. It's just crazy. But yeah, if you look at Figure A here, just this figure of overdose deaths, when you do continual displacement versus when you don't do displacement, it's insane how many more overdose deaths there are. And that goes down the line for serious injection related infections. I don't know what SIRI stands for, but it doesn't sound good. Hospitalizations are insanely
Serious
higher.
injection related infection.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, so B is the deaths related to
Hmm.
infection, and C is just the infections themselves. Okay.
Right.
Hospitalization is insanely higher for people who are continually displaced than people who aren't. And down, all down this list, it's just like if you gave a single shit about these people, then you wouldn't be doing this. And that's obvious without the fancy medical data, but the fancy medical data makes it a good deal more obvious.
Yeah.
Uh, um, the someone's sounds like someone's knocking on my ceiling.
That's the SWAT team, Bill. They're just trying to be polite.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my time has come. Knew this day would come eventually. Um, but and you think back, like it was sort of a blip in the political discussions around here, but there was a moment a couple of months ago when the idea of like a sanctioned outdoor living area for the city's unhoused population was floated, and it picked up a little bit of traction. And then manager Eric Batista just kind of flatly said no, and like very curtly just made like a reference to Skid Row, and
Hmm.
was like, "Do we want a Skid Row in the city of Worcester?" And I found that to be so insulting because it's like, oh, you want to be the city that just routinely harasses the most vulnerable people in its population over and over again, resulting in a higher rate of death and just general misery for those people. That's what you want to be.
That's just gross. And I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to, too, is we have a lot of people, and it's not just Worcester, it's everywhere. We have a lot of people in our society who can't handle being uncomfortable. We saw that during COVID, just at the outset, right? People losing their fucking minds over the idea that, what do you mean restaurants are going to be closed for 2 weeks, right? Like, some people just can't handle being uncomfortable. And I'm a firm believer that, like, being uncomfortable is probably the most important aspect of life. That's how you learn how good you have it, when you realize that, when you see somebody else who does make you feel uncomfortable a little bit. And you should feel uncomfortable
Right.
when we see our unhoused population, but it should activate people to want to do something to help people, not just throw their shit in a dumpster and hope they disappear.
Yeah, I mean, but that's really what it does activate
Yeah.
for most people is that
Right.
the issue of homelessness.
I love this.
Let him in,
What
man.
is going
Let
on?
him in.
Why are you being so rude, Bill?
They're like, shut up, stop talking about homeless people. Um, the issue, dude.
This is awesome. I mean, you got to
I'm
bang
about
back.
to go get a broom.
You got to bang back.
But the issue really is that like people don't really see unhoused people as. Hold on, sorry.
Maybe they're just putting up a painting.
People don't really see unhoused people as people first. They see them as
Right.
blight first. They see them
Right.
as an impact on property values first. So a lot of people are content with just the issue of homelessness is solved as soon as at the moment that they don't have to personally see it.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's where it ends. And they don't have any more sort of humane consideration for that, and turn their nose up at public policy that approaches it from a different perspective.
Right.
It's like, that's why we're seeing a city of Miami, I think Los Angeles, or I mean San Francisco too, are like legitimately considering very concentration campy proposals
Sure. Yeah.
for shipping unhoused people off onto islands, you know, where that is where they can be interned, you know, and they aren't such a physical problem for, you know, the taxpayers. Um, and I just think that where we're going with this is nowhere good, and it's not like I don't really believe that that more people are going to be getting into homes anytime soon. So in the meantime, the way that we deal with the presence of an unhoused population says a lot about us, and in Worcester, it's not saying good things.
Well, it says a lot about us even in the best of times when we do have plenty of space and services and whatnot, but it speaks volumes when just this week we're having to discuss inclusionary zoning because we're in the middle of a housing crisis. And even if you are like an upper middle class dude, good luck finding a primary care physician in Worcester, right? Like that might
Yeah.
happen in the next 5 years. Like we're talking about a truly vulnerable population, and we used to be a city that celebrated our access to services. Those services have been wholesale decimated over the last decade, or the ones that are still functioning are just at capacity. And we don't have the excuse anymore, like we used to, at least pretend we had the excuse to turn around and say, well, there's plenty of opportunities here for you. Just like, yeah, no, there is no opportunity. Like somebody's at that point in their life, like they either need a hand or they need to be left alone because they've made a choice that they don't want to be part of our bullshit society anymore, and they'd rather sit back and have a good view of us destroying ourselves.
Right. Yeah. But oh my God, shut the fuck up. But yeah, we've made the choice in Worcester that we cannot leave them alone.
Right.
I mean, it would be very simple, bit of public policy to just be like, okay, leave them alone.
Yeah.
But we have made the conscious choice that we need to be doing, as far as I know, weekly homeless camp sweeps and evictions that never get talked about or written about, and
Correct.
almost always no one knows about them or hears about them. And I wouldn't be knowing about them or hearing about them if it weren't for a really cool group of activists who are like actually trying to help these people instead
Yeah.
of just making sure that they're not on, you know, private property.
Sure.
And they let me know whenever these happen, and I get the same text like once every 3 or 4 days. Oh, there's one happening, you know, there's one happening here, there's one happening here, and it's the same people
Right.
every time, and they're just being shuffled around the same area, you know.
Yeah.
And that's happening over by Walmart, and that's happening up on Lincoln Street, and those are sort of the two sort of main places where this activity is happening right now. But I don't know if you caught, this is actually, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but it just jogged my memory. Did you see the police press release about the two 17-year-old kids that beat the crap out of a homeless person in
No.
Elm Park?
I did
Hold on.
not, but I've
Let
been.
me-
This is something that's been like I've been waiting for this to happen locally because it's been happening nationally, where
Yeah.
unhoused populations are starting to be targeted, especially by young white fashy kids. But no, I didn't catch that happening locally.
I'm gonna pull it up right now because it's the press release is definitely worth a read, and it's the cops did arrest these kids. They didn't just give them a high five, but they might have also given them a high five. We don't know.
Well, I mean, but that's and I'm not going to take Bill's approach and say that anyone was given a high five, but I think there is some responsibility to be placed on the city there, where if you paint a group of people as and you other them in a way that we just can't tolerate having you around, and the city's response is to clear them out. I mean, that's some pretty basic vigilante mentality there, right? Eventually, some lunatic is going to say, "Hey, we can do this too," and save the city a bunch of money, right? Like,
Right.
and that's
right.
when society goes sideways really fast. And
Yeah.
I think the city bears some responsibility for things like that happening, where we're not actually looking out for vulnerable members of our community.
Yeah. Oh, Travis, I just sent the link, but I'll read it here. It was on 4/10, which was Monday, I believe, and it was on April 8th, 2023, about 6:55 p.m. Worcester police officers were dispatched to Elm Park for report of several youth for a report of several youth trying to fight someone. Officers arrived on the scene and discovered that an unhoused individual had been harassed by several youth who were pushing the male, taunting him, and taking his hat. Some bystanders intervened to protect the male and called the police. Officers issued be on the lookout, the description of the youths, and checked the area. As officers checked the area, they observed 4 youths who matched the description given by witnesses. They were running from police through the yards of residential homes in an apparent attempt to evade being detained. After a brief foot pursuit, officers caught up with one of the males who was placed in handcuffs. The youth, who was 17 years old, was placed under arrest and charged with assault and battery, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. An officer caught up with a second 17-year-old youth who resisted an officer's attempt to detain him by elbowing the officer in the chest. Hell yeah. Officers were able to place him under arrest. The second youth is charged with disorderly conduct and assault and battery on a police officer. So, yeah, this is 4 kids in Elm Park were pushing, shoving, taunting an unhoused person, and apparently taking his hat.
Bill,
So
I know neither of us are laughing at this press release, but are you doing this podcast in a different time zone where it's 3 a.m. and it's totally unreasonable to talk at a normal volume during the day? Or what is going on with your neighbors?
I don't know. I don't know if they're mad at me. I have no idea what they're doing, but it does not stop. It sounds like somebody has a cane. And I don't know. I don't even want to know, honestly, at this point.
But yeah, and along those same lines too. Like, I would be fascinated to find out, again, because of the relationship the city has, or the tone the city has taken with the unhoused population. I would be fascinated to see what kinds of assaults, battery, people being accosted takes place on a daily basis with, say, people panhandling, which is as constitutional as voting, right? Like we helped settle that in Worcester, but people don't go to report those crimes to the police because that tone has already been set. The city isn't here to help us. Like there's likely to be an entire catalog of crimes being committed against people who don't feel as though the city is here to help them and or protect them.
Right. And you'll notice from the release, it was only because there were bystanders that the police got called.
Right.
And kudos to those bystanders. And also, how stupid are these kids to be doing that in Elm Park where there's always people,
right?
But kudos to the bystanders for calling the cops. But who knows how many times or how often this happens when there isn't any bystanders, and the cops don't get called. There's no way of knowing, and that just speaks to the vulnerability of this group of people. And I do think that you're right. That taking cues from the way that the city treats these people probably do feel galvanized to treat these people with a big lack of respect, and I think that that's really bad, and I don't see. Oh my god.
It's fantastic.
I can't deal with this. This is hilarious.
So for anyone that's tuning in, you won't see it live, but we will have for you as an extra, only available on TikTok, where Bill goes upstairs and beats his neighbor with his own cane. That's gonna be...
Yeah, I'm about to. But I think this is a good place to leave it for today. This was another very successful Power Hour, and Brendan, thank you for joining me. Travis,
no, thank you for letting me jump in.
Yeah. Whoa. And thank you for everyone that was watching and commenting in the comments. And this will be available as a podcast on Patreon in probably like tomorrow. We'll see. Still ironing out the kinks of how to get this going. But this is going to be a fun thing to do weekly or near weekly. And it's very easy to do. So we want to keep it going and have this sort of be like the short and sweet and not overly heavy antidote to the 5-hour city council streams on Tuesday, where we get to set the pace of play and don't bore you to death on purpose.
Yeah.
But so Brendan, anything to plug or put on the radar before we?
I just want to
part
plug you,
ways?
man, and make sure everyone you're subscribed to Worcester Sucks and I Love It. If you know somebody who isn't, get them a subscription, and please, please, please subscribe by paper check.
Yes.
All of us want to Bill to continue getting checks and not know what to do with them. It's worth it for everybody. Thank you.
And if you're listening to this on Patreon, we thank you very much for your support.
Yeah, thank you
Always.
so much. And we will talk to you next week for episode 2. We'll keep it going. Hopefully Brian O'Donnell will be back. Brian O'Donnell is going to evangelize the Worcester hot dog safari and bring it to New Orleans. So that's exciting. We're our number one cultural output at this time is the hot dog safari because it's happening somewhere else. It's the low bar here in Worcester. But yeah, thank you everyone, and try to enjoy the rest of this nice day.
Have a good one.